Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Opportunity Zones webinar. We'll be starting in the next couple minutes, so just sit tight and we'll get started soon. Catherine, just to answer your question, yes, there will be a recording of this available, ideally by the end of the week. All right, I see that it's 11:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started now. Jonathan, do you want to kick things off?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Kane. I'm Director of Special Projects and Finance in the Deputy Mayor's Office. Let me start by saying thank you. I appreciate everybody's time today. Hopefully, this will be sort of an education and an update on what's going on in the Opportunity Zone program. So opportunity zones really have been a valuable economic development tool to help revitalize underserved communities across the district. If you look since 2018, OZ has led to over $1 billion in new investment in residential, commercial, and businesses across the district, with a high volume of this investment going east of the river. Last year, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act made OZ permanent and created a new generation for the program. So we're excited about the continuation of this program and look forward to building on the momentum from the past 8 years and creating vibrant communities across the district. Today's webinar really will provide an overview of the Opportunity Zone program, highlight how these incentives have been used in the district, and discuss changes to the OZ program. We're also going to discuss what DEMPED has done in preparation of OZ 2.0 designation and share our preliminary recommendations for the OZ 2.0 census tracts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pazan to get started with the program. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jonathan, and good morning, everyone. My name is Passan Pereira, and I'm the Development Finance Manager with DEMPED and the Project Manager for the district's Opportunity Zone efforts. As Jonathan mentioned, today's webinar will go into how Opportunity Zones can continue to meet the district's economic and community development goals, and also present our preliminary recommendations for Opportunity Zones 2.0. So this webinar will comprise of two different portions. So the first half of today's webinar will talk about Opportunity Zones 1.0, so providing a primer on what exactly Opportunity Zones are and how this incentive has been used within the district, and also providing resources that the district offers for Opportunity Zones. The second half of this presentation will go into Opportunity Zones 2.0, so talking about changes to the Opportunity Zones program and going into detail as far as what DEMPED has done so far during the Opportunity Zones 2.0 designation process, and then presenting our preliminary recommendations for Opportunity Zones 2.0. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A. Over the course of the presentation, we'll be collecting any sort of comments, and then we will reserve about 10 minutes or so at the end of the presentation to answer any questions which come up within the Q&A. This presentation will also be recorded and will be published onto our OZ Marketplace and DEMPED website following this meeting. So let me jump in and talk about how we got here in the first place. So the Opportunity Zones program was an incentive program that was created to invest in underserved communities across the United States in order to drive economic revitalization. So back in 2017, this program was created under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Following that, there was a 90-day period in which state governors and the DC mayor were able to evaluate their census tracts and then nominate census tracts for Opportunity Zones designation. And then in May of 2018, the U.S. Department of Treasury certified the Opportunity Zones 1.0 map. As many of you know, back in July of last year, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025 established the Opportunity Zones as a permanent fixture in the U.S. tax code, and also created a new iteration of this incentive program starting in 2017. And so where we are right now is we have an opportunity to designate and nominate tracts for this new generation of our Opportunity Zones program. And so in September, DC will be nominating 25 census tracts for Opportunity Zones 2.0. And so I understand we have a variety of stakeholders on this call, ranging from members of the community, real estate developers, economic development professionals. So I just wanted to use this time to provide a primer as far as what exactly Opportunity Zones are. So Opportunity Zones are a federal tax incentive that allows for investors to defer their capital gains taxes in order to invest in census tracts that are designated as qualified opportunity zones, or QOZs. Throughout this presentation, there will be a few acronyms that I'll be throwing around. So I also wanted to use this time to just define a few key terms. And so qualified opportunity zones, or QOZs, are the low income, high poverty census tracts that are designated by the DC mayor, which are targeted for economic development. Under the IRS guidelines for opportunity zones, the district has 25 QOZs, which we are able to nominate. So investors are able to, pool their capital gains, deferred capital gains into qualified opportunity funds or QOFs. And so these are the actual vehicles in which equity investments are made. And then these equity investments are then deployed into one of two different options. So either into qualified opportunity zone businesses or QOZBs, which are trade or businesses operating within a QOZ, or qualified opportunity zone business properties or QOZBPs, which are tangible properties that are located within a QOZ. Now, I want to make three key points as far as what exactly opportunity zones are. So the first one is that opportunity zones are a federal tax incentive. So this is not a district program. While the district is in charge of nominating census tracts for opportunity zone designation, the administration of this program is handled through the Department of Treasury and IRS. The second key distinction that I want to make as far as what opportunity zones are is that opportunity zones aren't a grant or a loan or philanthropic capital. This is actually equity capital that is contributed by private investors into qualified opportunity funds and QOZs. And so by, making these equity investments, investors are anticipating returns over time, and it is driven by the private market and what returns they are able to generate. The final distinction that I want to make as far as what opportunity zones are is that there's not a central program with an application involved with opportunity zones. So investors can create their own qualified opportunity funds, and then in order to receive the tax benefit that opportunity zones provides, they have to certify through IRS and Treasury, and then for district level benefits, have to certify through DEMPED. But this is primarily driven through the private market and through investors rather than having a centralized program that the district oversees. So how exactly does this opportunity zones incentive work? So I know this flowchart may seem a bit daunting, but I will, provide an overview just at a very high level. So the way that this incentive works is that investors who sell an asset and generate capital gains, whether that's selling property or selling stock, will generate capital gains. And so oftentimes by realizing capital gains, an investor would be subject to a capital gains tax up to 20%. Rather than pay this capital gains tax, investors can reinvest their capital gains into a qualified opportunity fund, which can be their own qualified opportunity fund or a third-party qualified opportunity fund within 180 days of realizing their capital gains. And so investments that are made into a qualified opportunity fund can be deployed in one of three ways. So that can either be through opportunity zone stock or partnership interest, through QOZBs, or through QOZBPs. One distinction that I want to make for qualified opportunity zone businesses is that these businesses cannot be sin businesses. So that includes massage parlors, gambling, or liquor stores, or any other alcohol institutions in which the majority of sales are generated through off-site alcohol consumption. But the real benefit for opportunity zone investments are through the long-term hold of capital gains into qualified opportunity funds. So if investments are held into a qualified opportunity fund for 5 years or so, there's a 10% tax exclusion on the original deferred gain. So for example, if you generate $100 in capital gains and put that into a qualified opportunity fund and hold that for over 5 years, after 5 years, you would only have to pay capital gains tax on $90 out of that $100 that you invest. If you hold it for 7+ years, that exclusion increases to 15%. So you would only pay taxes on $85 out of that $100. But the real benefit for opportunity zones is for a hold of 10+ years. And so under Opportunity Zones 1.0, an investor would receive a 15% tax exclusion on their original deferred gain, plus a 100% exclusion on any sort of appreciated gain from that investment. So say after 10 years or so, your $100 that you invest becomes $200. You would only pay capital gains tax on 15% or on 85% of that original $100 that you invest. And so the $100 that you would then generate would not be taxed. For Opportunity Zones 1.0, because of the timeline for the Opportunity Zones 2.0 program, any sort of deferred capital gains through 1.0 must be recognized by December 31st of this year in order to receive that 1.0 benefit. So after December 31st of this year, then the new rules for benefits would fall under the 2.0 program, which I will go into once we get to the 2.0 section. So what exactly can Opportunity Zone capital be used for? So the answer is there's a variety of different ways that Opportunity Zone capital can be used. In the past 8 years or so of the Opportunity Zones program across the country, the primary source of, or the primary use, I should say, of funds has been towards real estate development. And so that includes the new construction of commercial or residential properties. I've included two examples to the right of projects within the district that have been generated and have been supported through Opportunity Zones capital, which includes the Whitman Walker Health Clinic at Max Robinson Center in St. Elizabeth's campus in Ward 8, as well as the Raynard Apartments at the Parks of Walter Reed in Ward 4. Opportunity Zones capital can also be used to support affordable or market rate housing. There really is no limitation as far as what types of housing can be developed through Opportunity Zones, but it has been a tool to help support mixed income housing developments or even affordable housing developments as well. Opportunity Zones can also be used to support other uses within development. So that includes infrastructure and community facilities and also renewable energy projects. With infrastructure and community facilities, while Opportunity Zones, the benefit of it really involves, the long-term hold and the appreciation of a project over time. These, developments or these types of projects for infrastructure and community facilities are often tied into larger projects that have a revenue generating product, such as commercial development or residential development. Finally, Opportunity Zones capital can also be used to support operating or startup businesses. So to help support equipment and facilities for operating or startup businesses and other variety of uses as well. And then finally, Opportunity Zone capital can be used to support pre-development costs and other working capital for planned projects. So from a district perspective, our main goal for the Opportunity Zones incentive is really to maximize the benefit that Opportunity Zone investments can provide for DC residents. So what exactly does that look like? So there's four key components of what benefits can be provided for DC residents at large and the community. So that includes increasing the stock of affordable and workforce housing throughout the district. That includes delivering neighborhood serving amenities, which may include grocery stores, daycare centers, healthcare clinics, and other neighborhood and community serving amenities, and also could include recreational amenities and other park space. The benefits could also include creating jobs and career pathways for residents. So that might include creating real estate development that attracts employers, that creates jobs for DC residents, or that could even include workforce training and workforce development programs in order to help uptrain DC residents. And then finally, the main goals for the Opportunity Zones program from a district standpoint is to be able to capitalize DC businesses. So to be able to support our small businesses and help them grow, as well as to be able to attract businesses into the District of Columbia. So back in 2018, the district had designated 25 census tracts as qualified opportunity zones. As you can see on the map, 18 of those 25 census tracts are included in wards 7 and 8 east of the river. And these are the areas that, are in the most need of investment. And, as a result, that's why the majority of our census tracts are directed in ward 7 and 8 east of the river. Since 2018, the district has attracted over $1.2 billion in capital to these qualified census tracts through the Opportunity Zones program. So that $1.2 billion in total capital attracted has yielded nearly 4 million square feet of new development. So that includes over 2,800 new homes delivered, of which 330 plus of those have been new affordable homes, as well as almost 700,000 square feet of new commercial space. The Opportunity Zones program has also created and supported 120 businesses and in addition, created 860 plus jobs uh, in the past 8 years. So, from a district standpoint, the main resource that we provide for the public is our Opportunity Zones Marketplace or OZ Marketplace. So, many of you had probably seen the OZ Marketplace when registering for this event. And so, within the OZ Marketplace, we provide guidance on setting up a DC qualified opportunity fund. And so, these DC qualified opportunity funds can receive the district level capital gains tax benefits deferrals, and every year interested DC qualified opportunity funds will have to submit a application to us in order to ensure that they're compliant with IRS and Treasury requirements, and as a result, will receive the benefits on a district level. The key feature for the OZ Marketplace, though, is a platform to provide project sponsors and investors with a way to find opportunity zone investment opportunities. So within this platform, project sponsors can submit their projects to investors, providing details as far as what sort of investment they're looking for and the types of benefits that it would provide for DC residents. And prospective investors can also use this platform to find various opportunity zone investment opportunities and connect with the project sponsors. So I want to pivot into Opportunity Zones 2.0. So as I mentioned earlier, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025, or OB3A, established Opportunity Zones as a permanent fixture in the U.S. Internal Revenue Code. And so as a result, a new Opportunity Zones map will take place January 1st of 2027. And from there on out, every 10 years or so, this map will be updated. This also creates an interesting overlap. And so the previous 2018 map for Opportunity Zones will actually sunset on December 31st of 2028. So as a result, there will be a 2-year overlap period between the Opportunity Zones 1.0 map and the Opportunity Zones 2.0 map. As part of this new Opportunity Zones 2.0 program, there really is a prioritization for investments in what are called rural zones. DC does not have any rural zones that are defined by IRS and Treasury, so that doesn't necessarily apply for this conversation. But across the country, there are additional tax benefits for investors who place their investments into rural opportunity zones. As a result, there are also tightened eligibility requirements for what census tracts can be eligible for Opportunity Zones 2.0 designation. And moving forward, there will be stronger reporting and compliance for funds and projects. IRS and Treasury has yet to publish this guidance, but that will likely come as we near the Opportunity Zones 2.0 timeline. And so the key changes to the benefits that I had talked about are really with the 10 plus year hold. And so rather than a 15% tax exclusion on your original deferred gain, there's only a 10% tax exclusion on that original deferred gain as part of the Opportunity Zones 2.0 program. As you can see on this slide here, there's also a removal of the 7% step up or the 7% benefit. However, there will still remain the 100% exclusion on any sort of appreciated gain that is generated on investments into a qualified opportunity fund. So the key feature for this program will still remain intact as part of the 2.0 rollout. From a timeline perspective, so 2 weeks ago today, Treasury and IRS opened a nomination window for selecting and designating Opportunity Zone 2.0 census tracts. This window will close September 28th of this year. So by this date, the DC mayor will have to submit her nominations for the Opportunity Zones 2.0 program. Following the close of the nomination window, there'll be a 30-day period in which IRS and Treasury will review nominations and ensure that the nominated tracks that DC recommends are in compliance with the Opportunity Zones 2.0 program. And then December 31st of this year is when Treasury will certify the new map. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a mandatory recognition for deferred gains for OZ 1.0 investments during this time. And any sort of investments that are made on January 1st will fall under the Opportunity Zone 2.0 rule. And then on January 1st of this year, that is when the Opportunity Zone 2.0 cycle will begin. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, there will be a 2-year period in which the OZ 1.0 map and the OZ 2.0 map will be in effect simultaneously. And then December 31st of this year, of 2028, will be when the OZ 1.0 map will sunset. And then sometime in 2036 is when the new nomination cycle will begin for Opportunity Zones 3.0. So what has the district done so far in preparation for Opportunity Zones 2.0? So over the past 6 months, DemPed has undergone a due diligence process in order to identify what census tracts may be good candidates for Opportunity Zones 2.0. And so as part of this due diligence process, we've kind of taken 3 discrete tasks. So the first task has been eligibility determination. So what we've done in this task is looked at what tracks will be eligible under 2.0 based on new guidance from IRS and Treasury. I'll go over what exactly the new eligibility requirements are in the next slide. We also conducted an investment evaluation. So that looks at 3 different components. So the first one is looking at current Opportunity Zone investments. And so seeing which tracks that were designated under 1.0 have been successful in generating investments through the program, which tracks may have been a little bit slower to attract investments through the program, and looking at which may be good candidates to continue designation for Opportunity Zones 2.0. We also looked at the real estate development activity, so seeing where there is a pipeline of projects that could benefit from Opportunity Zones investments. And then finally, looking at the economic development opportunities, so seeing where there is a socioeconomic need for Opportunity Zone investments, where there are development sites which could be later repositioned for investments that may be beneficial, may benefit from Opportunity Zones, and also looking at what are other incentives that the district offers that could be layered on with Opportunity Zones in order to realize various projects. The last piece, which we are in progress right now, is stakeholder feedback. So this has involved 2 key components. So the first one, back in the spring of this year, DemPed hosted a series of roundtable meetings with various developers and economic development professionals and other stakeholder groups to understand what the benefits and challenges have been with the Opportunity Zones 1.0 program, and also to identify where there may be areas that could be prime for Opportunity Zone designation. The second part is what we're doing today, which is presenting a public webinar on the Opportunity Zones program to date, and then also allowing the public to provide feedback on the recommendations that we will later present in this presentation, just to make sure that the tracks that we do designate for 2.0 align with the community's needs for Opportunity Zone designation in this next generation of the program. So for eligibility under updated IRS and Treasury guidelines, the district now has 66 eligible tracks to consider for 2.0 nomination. Back in the 1.0 version of this program, the district had 97 tracks that we could choose from. So based on the new eligibility requirements, this is about a 1/3 decrease in what we're able to choose from. Also, based on IRS and Treasury guidelines, the district is able to nominate 25 census tracts for Opportunity Zone designation. So the new eligibility requirements are that for census tracts to be eligible, they can be eligible under 2 pathways. So the first one is if their median family income, or MFI, does not exceed 70% of the Washington MSA's MFI. Previously, that was 80% of the MSA's MFI. Census tracts could also be eligible if their MFI does not exceed 125% of the Washington MSA's MFI, and poverty rates are at least 20%. In the 1.0 program, there was also a rule that allowed for jurisdictions to designate census tracts which were adjacent to eligible census tracts as long as they had a MFI that was 125% or lower of the MSA's MFI. Under OB3A, that rule has been repealed. And so now census tracts which fall under the two tracts which I mentioned earlier will only be considered for Opportunity Zones 2.0 designation. So as a result of the new changes, as you can see on the map to the right, there are actually 5 census tracts that we had designated previously, which will no longer be eligible for designation. So that includes in Ward 4, the Brightwood and Tacoma census tracts. In Ward 1, that includes Howard University and LeDroit Park. And then in Ward 7, that includes the Randall Highlands, Naylor Gardens, Hillcrest, and Fairfax neighborhoods. So the second part of our due diligence process looked at an investment evaluation. So as I mentioned earlier, we really looked at 3 different components for, looking at what census tracts may be primed for Opportunity Zone designation under the 2.0 program. So the first one was looking at Opportunity Zone investments to date. So seeing of the 25 census tracts that were designated as Opportunity Zones, which ones have been successful in attracting capital, creating jobs, supporting local businesses, training DC residents, and adding community amenities. The second component was looking at economic development opportunities. And so with that, we looked at the socioeconomic factors that may influence a need for designations. So that includes unemployment rates as well as persistent poverty, or those census tracts that have had poverty rates that have exceeded 20% for over 30 years. The second component has been looking at various development sites that could be supported through Opportunity Zone investments. So that's looking at commercial density, district-owned properties, federal buildings, which could be up for disposition, as well as vacant or blighted properties. With looking at the commercial density, this evaluation process also came at a serendipitous time, just given the ongoing DC 2050 comprehensive plan updates. So we were able to see, where are there sites that could be upzoned as part of the future land use map in 2050, future land use map 2050, which, could be beneficial for supporting the types of development that Opportunity Zones can support. Another component that we looked at are the various economic development incentive districts. And so we looked at where there are other incentives that could be layered onto Opportunity Zone designation in order to help bring projects across the finish line. So that includes areas where, there are TIF or pilot districts, business improvement districts, DC Main Streets corridors, Great Streets corridors, hub zones, neighborhood prosperity fund boundaries, and the supermarket's tax credit incentive boundaries. Finally, we looked at real estate development activities. So we wanted to see, with census tracts that are eligible, where are there census tracts that have seen, development activity and where there is momentum, but, may have stalled out due to ongoing market conditions that we've been experiencing. And so that includes looking at the commercial and residential activity since 2018, as well as pipeline developments that have, occurred in that time. We also looked at where there are, ongoing large-scale projects or development opportunities. So looking at where there are PUDs or planned unit developments in the pipeline, as well as where there are other district development projects. So that includes projects that are sponsored by DMPED, DHCD, DCHFA, OP, and even DCHA as well. So based on this evaluation, DMPED has identified 25 census tracts, which for our preliminary recommendations for Opportunity Zones 2.0. As you can see on the map here, 17 of the 25 tracts that we've included are tracts that were previously designated under 1.0, but I did want to call out some new additions to the tracts that we are recommending for OZ 2.0 designation. So that includes in Ward 1, 2802 in Columbia Heights, in Ward 4, 1804, which is the Brightwood neighborhood, in Ward 5, 8803, which is Ivy City and Union Market, as well as Tract 111, which is the Langdon Gateway. And in Ward 6, we've also recommended including Tract 105, which includes the Federal Center Southwest and Greenleaf neighborhood. In Ward 7 and 8, we've proposed a swap of census tracts to for OZ 2.0 designation. So in Ward 7, we have a swap that includes Tract 9904, which is Marshall Heights. And in Ward 8, we've included a swap that includes Tract 7502, which is the Skyland Buena Vista neighborhood, as well as Tract 9807, which includes Bellevue. So what I want to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes or so doing is walking through each ward and presenting what our vision is for opportunity zone investments and what we see as the types of investments that could be generated as part of opportunity zones 2.0. And so in Ward 1, what we've seen is that, in the last 15 or 20 years, the DC USA Center has, really been a catalyst for revitalizing the neighborhood. But, in the last 5 years or so, and especially because of the COVID pandemic, this commercial corridor has seen struggling commercial activity with fluctuating retail vacancies, as well as commercial spaces which may not be suitable for aspirational tenants here. And so where we see the Ward 1 opportunity zones 2.0 properties or 2.0 opportunities are to repurpose some of those underutilized commercial spaces in and surrounding DC USA in order to attract and retain neighborhood serving retailers and community amenities to really round out the Columbia Heights neighborhood. We also see a designation of 2802 as a way to provide gap financing pathways for various mixed income housing projects and adaptive reuse developments that are in the pipeline for this census tract. And then finally, for investments in small business and workforce development opportunities. So as many of you are familiar, there is a very robust micro-entrepreneurial ecosystem within Columbia Heights. And so we envision opportunity zone funds could be a tool in order to be used in order to support some of those public realm enhancements that might support integration of the vendors along, in and surrounding DC USA in really kind of fleshing out that neighborhood. Moving up to Ward 4, so one main catalyst project that has kind of influenced the trajectory of Ward 4 has been the Parks of Walter Reed, which is just to the north of tracts 1803, 1804, and 1901. Given that project success and the continued investment in the Parks of Walter Reed, we really see future investment interest in the property in the census tract surrounding the Parks of Walter Reed, particularly along Georgia and Missouri avenues. And so our opportunity zone vision for Ward 4 is to, one, repurpose the various underutilized commercial lots along Georgia and Missouri avenues in order to attract and retain some of those neighborhood serving retailers and community amenities. And similar to Ward 1, also providing some gap financing pathways for various infill mixed-use developments along these key commercial corridors. And then additionally, to also continue to invest in small business and workforce development opportunities in order to grow, to continue to grow the small business ecosystem within those key commercial corridors. In Ward 5, the two key corridors that we're excited about for the potential of opportunity zones in order to attract investment is along Rhode Island Avenue and New York Avenue. As many of you know, along these two corridors, there's a high volume of chronically vacant and legacy industrial sites. And so our key vision for Ward 5 in our opportunity zone designation approach is to redevelop those vacant and underutilized sites along these gateways into DC from Prince George's County into providing mixed income housing and other retail and community amenities for the community within these census tracts. Additionally, in the past decade or so, we've seen some development interest in various census tracts within Ward 5. However, in the last few years or so, due to ongoing market conditions, many of these development projects have been stuck due to the lack of available financing and momentum for delivering these projects. So with designation of these census tracts in Ward 5, we also see this as a pathway to unstick some of these pipeline development projects and get them across the finish line. And then, as with Wards 1 and 4, we also see a designation of these census tracts as a way to invest in small businesses and provide workforce development opportunities in Ward 5. In Ward 6, we see we have two census tracts that we've designated or considered for designation. So that's tract 64, which includes Buzzard Point, and tract 105 to the north, which includes the Federal Center Southwest and Greenleaf neighborhood. And so the key opportunity that we see for designating these census tracts is to provide gap financing pathways for disposed federal properties which may come online. So in tract 105 in particular, we have three census tract or three properties, which include the Switzer Building, the Humphreys Building, and the Cohen Building, which have been identified by the General Service Administration as buildings which have been up for accelerated disposition. So we see opportunity zones as a way to help support the repositioning of those buildings if they were to come online into private hands. Additionally, with Buzzard Point, for example, there has been development momentum for opportunity zone investment into this tract, and we would like to continue to see investment in Buzzard Point to really get it over the finish line with repurposing and revitalizing this community. And so with the designation of these two census tracts, we see also this as a way to repurpose some of those vacant and underutilized commercial spaces in order to attract other employers, neighborhood serving retailers, and other community amenities within this neighborhood. In Ward 7, this ward has a high volume of census tracts which provide an opportunity for redevelopment. And so with the Ward 7 development opportunities, we see a number of large scale pipeline development projects and other transit oriented development projects within this ward as opportunities for the OZ program to help support. So with the transit oriented development sites, for those who aren't familiar, the sites that we've included are along the Orange Line corridor, which is adjacent to the Anacostia Highway and Kenilworth Avenue, as well as the Blue Line corridor, which is along East Capitol Street. And so with opportunity zone designation along these census tracts, we see this as a way to provide gap financing pathways for some of these large scale development projects as well as transit oriented development sites. Additionally, Ward 7 and the census tracts that we've identified here have a high volume of vacant and underutilized infill sites. And so we see opportunity zone designation as a way to help deliver mixed income housing, neighborhood serving retailers, and community amenities within Ward 7. And then finally, with the lack of investment in Ward 7, we also see opportunity zones as a way to invest in small businesses and provide workforce development opportunities, whether that's through developing real estate to attract employers or through investment in workforce training programs within Ward 7. Finally, in Ward 8, similar to Ward 7, there's a number of large-scale development projects that have had success and continued momentum for investment. And so for our designation, we wanted to retain the number of census tracts here that I've seen that have had these large-scale development projects that the district has supported in order to help move those projects along. And so in addition to helping provide gap financing pathways for these pipeline large-scale development projects, we also see an opportunity to redevelop vacant and underutilized sites along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Alabama Avenue in order to deliver mixed-income housing, neighborhood-serving retail, and community amenities. And so, especially with the future land use map updates, we see this corridor as a corridor that has seen some upzoning and some potential for those investments that we want to capitalize as part of our designation process. Finally, similar to Ward 7, we see designation of these census tracts in Ward 8 as a way to invest in small businesses and workforce development opportunities. So now that we've presented our, recommendations, we want to hear your feedback as far as, what, we've designated or what we've considered for designation as part of Opportunity Zones 2.0. And so I've included a link to the survey as well as a QR code where you can submit your responses to, what we've, presented as part of our recommendations. And in particular, what we want to hear from you is, what census tracts or neighborhoods should be considered for Opportunity Zones 2.0 designation? And also, how would an Opportunity Zones designation in these census tract address the investment hurdles that these neighborhoods are facing? So, for example, we'd like to hear what types of investments might an Opportunity Zones designation attract in certain neighborhoods, or how would these investments benefit DC residents and local businesses? As well, we'd also like to hear what risk might be introduced as part of, designating various census tracts as an opportunity zone. So we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our public webinar on opportunity zones and are excited to hear your feedback. I've included my contact information to the left in case you have additional questions on the opportunity zones designation process. And then once again, I've also included a link to our survey and QR code to provide your feedback. So once again, we really appreciate your feedback. I know we have about 13 minutes left or so for this webinar, so I'd like to open the floor for any questions that have come up.
Thanks, Basan. So we had one comment and question come in from John Means. They say, noting the removal of the contiguous tract language, is there any appeals path for tracts that represent mayoral priorities and don't qualify for one reason or another? An example, within a few points of median family income, insufficient population to form a reasonable median family income basis.
All right, yeah, that's a great question. And so IRS and Treasury hasn't really made it clear what the appeals path is. So there is a option, like if there is a census tract that, isn't eligible for, various reasons that, jurisdictions can submit a recommendation to possibly include that tract. I will say that, based on the recommendations that we've included, there are, other census tracts that, are also would make good candidates for opportunity zone designation that we had to, leave out as part of this 25 census tracts. But what I will say is that, as part of this, feedback process, if there's any documentation that, can really provide a case basis for why a census tract should be considered and also highlighting mayoral priorities or highlighting any sort of economic development priorities or benefits that are overlooked or may not be seen based on the guidelines that IRS and Treasury set up. We'd be happy to collect that feedback and also to have for future conversations as part of potential pathways to maybe include census tracts that aren't eligible by right.
Thanks, Hassan. Our next question comes from Crystal McDonald. How are you defining workforce development opportunities in the OZ?
Right. So I would say workforce development opportunities are fairly broad. So really what we see, workforce development opportunities are a way to upskill, upskill residents within the District of Columbia. So providing skills training, through investments, providing, pathways and connections with, other employers. But once again, like the uses for kind of workforce development opportunities within the Opportunity Zones program is pretty broad, but generally speaking, and particularly in Ward 7 and 8, what we really want to help prioritize is, helping kind of upskill and provide, training for residents in order to have, be included in, the various industries that are growing within the District of Columbia.
Thanks, Basan. The next question is from Jeremy Sherman. They say, thank you for the webinar today. How are opposite sides of a street at the border of a census tract dealt with? For example, 14th Street in Columbia Heights, would only the east side of the street be included?
Right, that's a great question, and thank you for that, Jeremy. So yes, as of under the guidelines that we received, only the eastern portion of that census tract would be eligible for opportunity zones. I will say that if there is a development that, for example, may straddle a border between an eligible census tract and an ineligible census tract, there could be a pathway for making investments in a census tract that are not included. But there is a rule that 90% of investments made into a qualified opportunity fund must be within a qualified opportunity zone. So if 10% or less of an investment is made, outside of that tract, that would still, be compliant with IRS and Treasury guidelines. But 90% of it has to be within a qualified, opportunity zone. And so with the context of 14th Street and Columbia Heights, if there was a project that straddled the eastern and western boundaries of 14th Street, 90% of investments into the QF would have to be made towards components of the eastern portion of a investment.
This next one's from Bo Mankiti. Will there be a corresponding DC tax level 2.0 OZ program? If so, will there be any changes made to that program?
Right. So as of now, we are intending on having a continuation of the DC level capital gains benefits through opportunity zones. And so right now we are in the process of reviewing updated IRS and Treasury guidelines, and there may be some changes to the program, but for now we are intending on maintaining that district level benefit for capital gains tax deferrals.
Thanks, Basan. That is it for now. We can give it a few minutes if folks have additional questions, but nothing else in the queue.
And once again, if any questions come up after this webinar, feel free to reach out to myself. We will be posting this presentation, the recording, as well as the slides online later this week. So you'll have access to that moving forward. But once again, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
I don't see any additional questions and praise in the chat. So
all right, sounds good. We'll hang on for the next 5 minutes in case there are other questions that come up. But once again, thank you all once again for joining us, and look forward to hearing your thoughts.